Okay, today's chapter 7, is about corruption and ethics in global business. So there are different philosophical principles of ethics that will come up also when you take in other courses and ethics courses and into the business law and so forth. A lot of courses have an ethics module built into it, but there are imperative principles, generalization argument, and utilitarian principle. So the imperative principle is do what is right. That's kind of difficult to determine. How do you determine what's the right thing to do? In a way, we think, oh, it's really, really complicated. How do we know? But honestly, if you really, really think about it, usually you know what's right. But you don't always do what's right. That's the problem. And that's when it becomes unethical. If you have the opportunity to make a quick buck because you work in this organization and you happen to find out something about the stock price nobody knows, and nobody knows that nobody will ever find out that you shouldn't take that information in your advantage, but you might still do it. But in reality, you shouldn't do it, right? So it's really not necessarily that difficult to find out what's right to do. Because if you really think about it, and even intuitively, you know if it's wrong. Generalization argument is do what is right, but filter actions by considering consequences. So then now you look at things and you look at different options you can do. There's a problem that you can do A, B, or C, and you look at the consequences. What happens if I do A? What happens if I do B? What happens if I do C? So for example, if you have to, if your company's earnings are going down, sales has gone down, right? Sales has decreased. Your investors are upset because they're not getting high dividends, because your margins are low, your earnings are lower now. What are you going to do? Cut corners. But now you have to think about, should you lay off employees and tighten your workforce? Then employees are going to be disadvantaged. Should you increase prices? Then customers are going to be upset. So there are different options, right? You can continue having low margins. Your investors are going to be mad. Maybe they're going to pull out their money. You have employees, you're going to lay some off and pressure the others to work harder. You're not going to have happier employees, and maybe you're going to lose them to other companies that aren't doing what you're doing. You increase prices or cut corners and make cheaper products. Your customers aren't going to be happy. You have to look at the consequences and maybe choose the one that is best for all involved, which is a little bit like the utilitarian principle. Do what produces the greatest results for all involved, right? For all stakeholders. A company has several stakeholders, not shares or stocks. Stakeholders, people, basically groups that have that benefit from the success of a company. So internal employees, management, the shareholders, external people, the customers, the community, the government, the environment. These are all stakeholders that are affected by the actions of a company. And the larger the company is, the more detrimental the effects could be either way, right? Utilitarian approach, again, tries to choose the one that has the best results for the greatest number of people or greatest number of groups involved. What is ethics? It's the branch of philosophy that addresses the values pertaining to human behavior with regards to the rightness or wrongness of actions and to the goodness or badness of the intent and results of such actions. So what's right and wrong and what's good and bad, right? So sounds really complicated, but it's not. Integrity compared to ethics is, so that's really ethics is what's right and wrong and what's good or bad. Integrity is really doing what you say you're going to do. So adheres to the moral and ethical principles, soundness of moral character and honesty. As a principal matter, a person of integrity knows what is right and has the courage to do it, even if other people will not like it, because that's just the right thing to do. It does take courage sometimes to do the right thing. I wish politicians in the world would do the right thing. I don't know many politicians who are doing the right thing.
To define what is the right thing.
They don't even define it. They are just, I don't know what motivates them to make the decisions they make, but definitely it doesn't sound very ethical. Right?
Yeah.
So here are the basic steps in ethical decision making. When you have a decision to make, and these are the steps according to this textbook, right? Define all the facts and circumstances, including who, what, when, where, and how things and people are involved, right? Before you make a decision, just look at the big picture and look at everybody involved. Identify the people affected by the situation and their rights and obligations. Who is affected by this problem? Who will be affected by the decisions I make, right? How will they be affected? What are their rights? Am I violating their rights? What are their obligations? What do they have to do? Identify alternative decisions and consequences. So don't just come up with one, oh, okay, I'm going to do this, but come up with different decisions. I could do A and B or A, B, and C and evaluate each of them before you choose one. And make the decision, determine the right thing and when to do it, how to do it, and so forth, right? Maybe apply the utilitarian principle and choose the one that is best for the greatest number of people. Ethics in business and society. For ethical business activity to occur, mutual trust, fair dealings, and honest communication are essential. And when you're doing business across different countries, it does become a little more complicated because people in different countries and cultures may have different values, may have different laws altogether. That doesn't mean you can't find a way to do business with that country without compromising your ethical standards. You should never compromise your ethical standards. You know this saying, do in Rome as Romans do? No. That's not a good saying, especially if you're a US company, there are laws you have to follow, especially when it comes to corruption, the Foreign Corruption Practices Act, that you are not allowed to engage in corruption as a US company in other countries, right? Do in Rome some things as Romans do, but keep your ethical standards. Not to pick on Rome, right? That's just because of it's a historical thing, that why they say it. Nothing against Italians, right? Ethics and economics. Unethical behavior, inside information destroys fair investment markets, like insider trading. Publicly traded companies need to present a fair playing field. If they don't, if people get sneaky and have information, they we've seen it in the past, Enron scandal. A lot of you weren't born yet, 2000. Anderson Cooper. Sorry, not Anderson. Arthur Anderson. Anderson Cooper is the CNN guy. Arthur Anderson.
Consultancy firm.
The accounting consultancy. Arthur Anderson was working with Enron to cook the books. Big scandal, right? Commonly shared positive ethical values regarding respect for individuals, their lives, property, and their freedoms, promote individual integrity and doing the right thing. Yes.
There's like small gray areas. What I'm thinking is if especially dealing with international business, the market value for labor and things like that, and paying them versus what you can pay them. And at what point is that exploitation, and at what point is that because you can look at the market value of labor in another country and it's pretty low, and you can offer them more, and that in their eyes seems very ethical, but in our eyes, in our society, doesn't seem ethical because you're still underpaying them for the amount of work that they do.
Well, okay, that's a good example that you're giving here, actually, and I do that sometimes as discussion questions in my online classes. What about US companies that go to other countries and have bad labor conditions? They pay pennies on the hour. They have child labor. They have forced labor. What about that? We would never. Well, I shouldn't say we would never do that here, because we actually are doing it here today, right now. Companies like the big factories like food producers and things. They hire, you know, all the immigrants that are coming in, the young children, as young as 12, 13, they put them in factories, in factory farms. And they have to use chemicals to wash the factories in the middle of the night. They take those immigrant children because they're putting them in foster families. It's happening in the United States too, by the way. So we shouldn't just point fingers and saying and it's worse that it's happening here because we have laws against it and it's still happening. But coming back to Diego's example, is it ethical to go to other countries and use cheap labor to produce goods that we can then now sell in our own market so we can buy cheap products? Is that okay? Is that ethical?
That was on TED Talk attached to this module.
It is in this module, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember if it was on this
But it's
class or
hard
my.
to say after overall. It's a people decision also, right?
Yes,
They actually don't have another option in their countries, maybe.
that's
but
right.
that
They
was-
don't have other
that was-
options.
That was also their decision.
So it's not black and white. It is a gray area because you have, you know, first of all, the economy is different. We did talk about purchasing power parity and stuff, and you need less money in other countries to live, right? You don't need a minimum of 6 figures to have a normal life like you would in Silicon Valley, right? You don't need that. You can live well with $10,000 a year and not starve and have a normal life, right? So that's one thing. The other thing is, you know, we're talking about globalization. This isn't an international business class. We are pro-globalization, or we think we are, right? Globalization brings a lot of benefits, and some countries are just manufacturing heavy. Other countries are more intellectually heavy. Over the years, they have become that way. And part of it is because the economy is different in those countries, and sometimes it's actually a better option for a child to work in a factory than go into prostitution. Because some countries, it's so bad. That is what happens, right? So it's not black and white. And then you have the US company and the US executive, what are they gonna do? Oh, we're gonna offer them the same pay as we do in the United States? Then why go there? Keep your labor in the US, right? Or we'll pay them a little more, or we'll make them work less. Well, then you're not gonna get the benefit of cheap production. And then consumers, us, we're not willing to pay the price. We're not willing to pay $5 more for a t-shirt. We're going to buy it from the cheapest one. It's partially our fault too. We can't blame the companies. We are buying the products. If we stopped buying them, they wouldn't produce them. But they also do such a great job with marketing. But at the end of the day, it's your choice what you're gonna buy, Alexandra.
And I think companies just have to think of something can be ethically right and morally wrong, like
Yes.
for the consumer, right? So if we wanted as the United States to go and get, let's just say we're manufacturing something in China, we're buying it at a cheaper price, we're importing into the United
Mhm.
States, people are buying that product. And they could have child labor in like the factories very easily.
Yes.
Do we pay them more? Do we try to go for a company that has like no child labor where all the
As a
where all the
consumer,
workers and
we,
adults, right, we have to put all those things in consideration, so sometimes companies will pay they'll pay whatever the cheap labor is and kind of follow the country's standards of like production and stuff, so it's like, is it ethically right for the United States? Probably
No,
not, because
but-
we have a different standard over
Yeah.
here, but if we're following the standard of, let's say, China, there's a lot of like produce that gets imported from like Mexico, like following the different countries' kind of like ethics rules versus our kind of moral belief that we should be paying these people more, we should be offering more benefits, we should be, you know, the human
the
aspect of it.
human aspect, yes, but then as consumers, we won't buy from them because it's gonna be too expensive.
Mhm.
Ellen?
So I think we also have to consider that a company's primary obligation is to turn a profit for its shareholders. Like that's why they.
It's one of the obligations, one of the stakeholders or shareholders, and sometimes people think those are the most important ones. Are they really? What about employees? without employees, there would be no shareholders. What about customers? Without customers, there would be no shareholders. Right? What was I gonna say? So, we have a choice as consumers. We can choose to buy from a company that is more ethical, that engages less in those type of deals with contract manufacturers in countries that use child labor or that damage the environment or that have different values and beliefs than we personally do. The problem is sometimes those products are too expensive, we can't afford them, right? A lot of times they are. Even with food, you know, you buy chicken, you can buy chicken probably at $2 a pound, or you can buy it at $10 a pound. Not everybody can afford it at $10 a pound. You can buy a t-shirt for $5, you can buy a t-shirt, I'm sure, for $500. It's just now it's getting ridiculous for the brand name. Don't do that. But you know what? Let's say it's a t-shirt, a difference between t-shirt of $5 versus $20. And the $20 t-shirt, you know, they're produced somewhere where they're not treating children like slaves and things like that, right? You have a choice. You can just buy less t-shirts and you can live with less t-shirts in your life. I guarantee you, all of you go home and count how many t-shirts you have. You don't need as many t-shirts as you have in your closet. I guarantee you that. And declutter. We can all live with less. We can. So you can make a choice and buy more quality and more ethical products, and you can definitely live with less. All this marketing stuff, all this fast fashion we have and all that stuff, it's not good for us, it's not good for the environment, not good for anyone. Anyway, let's go on here. Corruption Perception Index, this is something you have to do for your countries, right, on your country stuff. But it's published each year by Transparency International, providing metrics to potential corruption risk for most of the world's countries. So which countries are more likely to practice corruption than others?
Russia.
Russia.
They're actually on the 10th place, I think.
What are they?
Yeah, but in terms of my understanding, they should be the first one, probably.
Oh, there might be worse. There are worse ones probably.
Italy is considered the most corrupt EU member.
Oh, Italy, definitely.
And Hungary. also.
Hungary, oh, yes.
They are probably competing with
Yeah.
it at some point.
Yeah. So there's a corruption index that Transparency International, you can look it up and then you have to write a little blurb about the corruption in that country, right? Because there's a risk if you go to a country and do business in a country where corruption is very common, and you know, as a US company, you're not allowed to engage in corruption, you might reconsider or you might go in with a different strategy at least, right? Here are some examples. So here on this one, Russia is number 6, right? And this is from what year? It's probably higher now. It was printed 2013.
2002, 2007.
Oh, right there, yeah. I'm sure they kind of go up and down a little bit, right? Yeah. So, and you can, again, go on the Transparency Index and you'll find your country on it, right? Okay, next topic is corporate social responsibility. What is it? What does it mean to be a good corporate citizen? Has nothing to do with citizenship, by the way. Good corporate world citizen, let's say it that way. Global citizen. Diego.
Not just taking in the consequences or benefits to your own country, but also the consequences and benefits for all people and cultures.
Very good. Yes, if you're doing international business, don't just do what's good for you and for your own country, but consider the country you're doing business with as well, right? In general, a corporate company's obligation to society, including welfare of people and places affected by the company's activities. You know, there's a saying called people, planet, and profit, right? It's an old saying, but some companies still hold that as a high value, right? Corporate social responsibility mandates what the company should do this. They should provide quality products and services for the consumer. Consumers are very important stakeholders. Without the consumers, the company wouldn't exist without the customers and consumers, right? Provide an appropriate return on investment for the company stockholders. The shareholders, they put money into the company, you gotta give them a good return to make it worth it. Treat its employees with dignity and respect. Employees are the ones making it happen. Take care of the environment. The environment has always been important, but we've done so much damage to the environment, irreversible damage. We need to stop damaging or limit damaging it as quickly and as much as we can. We're not quick enough. Meet its legal obligations, follow the law, and they know anywhere you're doing business. Your local laws and the laws of the country you're doing business with as well. Deal fairly with suppliers, lenders, and other business parties. Anybody you do business with, besides your customers, right? Be fair to people. Rules, policies, and guidelines. Oops. Making ethical choices, follow legal rules. You know, following the law in general is a good place to start, but a lot of times it's not enough. Sometimes you just, oh, you're following your law. I didn't do anything illegal. Well, you didn't, but it really wasn't nice what you did to all these people. Or maybe there's no law for this environmental issue yet, and you just keep causing damage knowingly just because there's no law. So just following the law is usually not enough, right? Apply formal ethical policies of your organization. An organization usually has some written down ethical policies, right? Think of things like, what would your mother or father say if you acted that way? What would your teacher say if I knew you did that? Just kidding. What would you? How would you feel if you saw your situation described in the newspaper? If you saw what you did, somebody else did it, or even better, if it was printed that you did that in a national newspaper. Alexandra did that. Student of college at College of San Mateo. The whole country knows about this now. What would you do? You would probably reconsider and say, if that was in a national news, maybe I shouldn't do it, right? Does the situation smell bad? You know? Smell bad?
Oh.
Well, not literally smell bad. But it's kind of like, if something feels wrong, it usually is wrong. You know, this is kind of fishy and I'm not sure. If you have that feeling, that's it, don't do it.
What if the person you're dealing with literally smells bad?
Don't do business with them.
Don't do business with them.
Well, I don't know, smells can be subjective too, you know, like food smells. Some people may say, oh, that smells so good, you know, like I love garlic. I love the smell of garlic, I love the taste of garlic. But there are some cultures that don't eat a lot of garlic, and to them it might not smell good. So I might have garlic breath. I'll brush my teeth before I have a business meeting. Yes, you were gonna say something?
I was gonna say, like, just because of like different cultural diets and things like that, like we all have, I think, as a people, different smells.
Yeah.
I think like Japanese people, or I think Japan says that we smell like milk.
We smell milk?
Yeah, I think so.
We drank
I don't
too
know.
much
That's
milk,
what I heard
maybe.
once.
Thank God I don't drink milk.
Did you ever
I don't
hear
know
in
that,
your
yeah,
family, or-
I don't know.
That American people smell like
Smell
milk.
like
Yeah, because we eat a lot more dairy
No,
products
but I
than
will
people in
say
Japan.
that I will say that people smell differently in Japan, and like also just in general, like my uncle, my grandmother, and like my cousins are all like very Japanese. They live next door, and they smell like significantly different from most people. It's like weird. They just smell
Just
different.
different, but not bad, right?
No, not bad.
Not
It's
dirty,
not
not
like,
bad, just different.
it's not like they sprayed on like cologne. It always just smells like they stepped out of a dryer. I can't explain it. It's like.
It's probably
I think
because
it's
they're
diet.
so clean, right? Yeah, yeah. I mean, you know, Americans in general are a very clean society too, you know, very high, physical hygiene is very important. In America and other parts of the world, including European countries, physical hygiene is not as big as here.
I'm not trying to be racist, but I mean, sometimes like when you come to like an Indian household, it smells a little.
Curry, it smells like curry or cumin, and other people love that smell. If you love Indian food, that's great. I mean, it's
Yeah, but it really, it's.
For you.
Stinks up the place.
for you, yeah, because you're not used to it. But I guarantee you, if you eat that food, probably
Indian
not going to
curry
be
smells
used.
amazing, like you would-
Right?
oh,
I think so. I mean,
so good.
and you know, in a country as white as Great Britain, you know what the fish and chips used to be the national dish in Great Britain. You know what it is now? Chicken tikka masala is the national dish in Great Britain. But ironically, I don't know if we have Indians in the class, but ironically, chicken tikka masala is not even an Indian dish. It's a British version of Indian food. Does anybody know about that?
Invented in Scotland.
In Scotland, yeah. But it's every Indian restaurant has that. And I lived in London last year and everywhere. I mean, love it. People love it. It's great. All right, anyway, so we're not talking about smelling, you know, if it's not, in this case, the smell was not to the actual scent, right? What you use your behavior as a marketing tool. Again, you know, is this something you can market yourself with? Like I did this great thing. Two principles that can help you make ethical decisions. Principles of consistency. Be consistent. Apply your principles consistently to any situation, right? Principle of respect. Choose the alternative that treats people with the greatest respect. And I think we talked about the golden rule versus the platinum rule in this class, did we?
No, we did that last class.
No, but did we talk in international business about it? Does that not sound familiar? There's one thing, principle of respect. You know what the golden rule is?
Yeah, that.
We did talk about that.
I think we talked about the golden, maybe not black, no.
So what's better than the golden rule?
Like,
Treating people the way they want to.
Exactly, so treating people the way they want to be treated. Don't assume, I mean, the golden rule is bad. Don't assume people want to be treated, you want to be treated, because people are different. Different values, different experiences, different attitudes and everything. Right? So you want to find out how do they want to be treated, and then you treat them that way. That's the platinum rule.
Oh.
Ring a bell?
Yes.
Okay, good. Oh, here are some scandals. Enron was insider trading. They inflated with they worked with their auditing company, accounting firm, Arthur Anderson, to cook the books, to make it look like they're making money. So people kept investing in Enron. People kept putting their 401ks and everything in Enron stocks, and people that worked there, bought more company stocks and things like that. The executives knew that it wasn't going well, and they sold their stocks, and somebody blew the whistle. Internal VP, she found out, and she blew the whistle, and it all went under, and Enron went under, and the accountancy went under. Neither one of them exist anymore. Huge scandal. A lot of people lost a lot of money, lost their retirement savings and everything, right? This, I think it was the CEO or maybe a VP, committed suicide in jail. They were convicted and stuff like that. So it was a huge scandal, 2000 or maybe 2002. I don't exactly remember the year. But it was key event leading to the US Congress to pass the new federal securities law for financial accounting and reporting transparency, the Sarbanes-Oxley Act. Sometimes they call it SOX, which says you have to have complete transparency, and insider trading is illegal, and with dates that you can't trade stock before and after certain numbers get released and things like that.
you get externally audited every 4 years too.
I don't know, the something like that. And the external auditing company has to be an independent company, not like Arthur Andersen and Enron, right? Vivendi, was a French multinational corporation with operations, music, television, and film and publishing, right? They used fraudulent accounting methods for several years to hide cash flow, liquidity, and financial problems to boost its performance and enhance the stock price. Not
Several years, that's a long time. Not getting caught.
Ponzi scam. What was that guy in New York called?
Charles.
No.
Bernie Madoff.
Yeah, Bernie Madoff. That was during decades. Bernie Madoff went on for a couple of decades, didn't it? Or at least 10 years. Yeah. Anyway, here's another one. Oh, the CEO was required to resign and pay $1 million in fine. It's probably nothing. Probably if I got a $50 fine, that's $1 million for him, right? Yeah. And the company paid $50 million also in fines, right?
You can put the FTX scandal next year.
Oh, yeah, it's not here. This is older slides, but FTX, of course, is a big scandal. Other significant ones, Teapot Dome scandal. I'm not
It
familiar
was a
with
big
it.
deal in the 1870s.
Oh, it's an old
It's-
one.
Yeah, it's like took down the.
Oh,
current
the interest
administration, I
loans,
think.
okay.
I didn't know that the Ponzi scheme was actually named after something.
Yeah, the Ponzi scheme was named after Charles Ponzi, yeah. Yeah. So, Bernie Madoff basically had people invest money and he supposedly invested it into the market. But instead, the next set of people that invested money, he used that money to pay off the first investors and so forth, and in the meantime, a lot of it went into his pocket. He went to jail. I think he wrote a book in jail
He
too.
did, it's in Barnes and Nobles.
Yeah, yeah, he wrote a book, I think, yeah. You know Martha Stewart, do you guys know Martha Stewart?
Yeah,
She does some home good, she was in jail too, she wrote a book in jail too, didn't she?
You know, she did more jail time than Snoop Dogg.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
She was a fight.
Yeah.
They're like, they're.
I'm not gonna, yeah. Anyway, can ethics be taught? Well, there are a lot of things, yes, ethics can be taught, but it's really within you, whether you do it or not. Again, a lot of times you know what's right, most of the time you know what's right or what's wrong. Cheating in class, when you take the quizzes, do you look at Google for the answer? I know you all do, that's why it's only worth 10%.
Not really.
Some of you don't, and if you don't, you're probably not gonna get 10 out of 10 with every quiz,
That's
which
fine.
is fine, it's not gonna bring your grade down that much either. 10% is kind of like, so nobody is gonna get 0% in quizzes. So you might get 60, 70%, that's only gonna bring your grade down by like 3%. And with the extra credit and stuff, it's not gonna have a big impact. But if I told you, if I told you can't use books, you can't use notes at home, you all are still gonna do it. That's why I'm not telling you. Quizzes are all open book, open notes, open everything, whatever you wanna do, but they also don't count much. If you wanna use them to test your learning, that's good. That's why I also give you two chances. Maybe take it first without anything. Really read the questions. Don't you get 2 chances? Oh, not in this class, I'm sorry. That's my business law.
I was about to be like, I could have done it again.
Never mind, no, sorry. I forgot. I forgot, because in my business law class, it's much harder question. So in business law, I give two tries, but not in the other classes, I forgot, yeah. Anyway, so these are the components if you want to teach ethics, or these are the areas that really should be covered. Okay, internal controls that companies can have, they can have a system of rules and procedures, make sure everything is done accurately, especially when it comes to accounting, right? Preventing accidental errors and irregularities, if there's intentional misrepresentation, that's another problem, but you can have controls in place to prevent that. Identifying errors and irregularities and provide corrective action if something was done wrong, whether it's intentional or not. Oops. We're almost done here. Oh, really quickly, Foreign Corrupt Practices Act applies to US firms and to foreign firms that engage in business in the United States. 2 parts. There's an anti-bribery provision. You cannot bribe. Not in the United States and not in other countries, right? A requirement to maintain adequate internal control systems over financial books and records. Part of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act. Because if you also do business overseas, there are money to transfer transactions and things like that. You have to have some clear records on it, right? The Sarbanes-Oxley Act again came out in 2002 because of Enron. It increased prison sentences to up to 25 years. It established a 20-year sentence for destroying, altering, or fabricating records in federal investigations, and requires that CEOs and C-level financial officers in publicly traded companies must certify that financial statement accurately present the financial condition of the firm, right? And they can be held criminally liable if they falsify information. I think that's it. Oh, these are just some things that you can, some quotes that people said. I hate when they say associate men of good quality. What about women? I should take that out. They're always, in the old days, they're always referring to he and men, but associate people of good quality. If you know, you can read that yourself. To educate a person in mind and not in morals is to educate a menace to society. So develop the mind. And I mean, just developing the mind is not enough. You have to teach morals, right? To see what is right and not do is a lack of courage. We kind of talked about that. It has become dramatically clear that the foundation of corporate integrity is personal integrity. You have to apply your personal ethical principles to your company, right? I like Albert Einstein. It is high time that the ideal of success should be replaced by the ideal of service. Yeah. You know, who are we servicing? Who are we helping? That's more important than how successful we are personally. I don't have respect for people because they make money. I don't respect Mark Zuckerberg. I respect somebody who's feeding the homeless on the street much more. Right? What service are we providing? How are we helping others? How are we making the world more pleasurable for people that we don't owe anything to, that we don't benefit by helping, right? Who are you helping that you don't expect any returns from? That's service, right? Anyway, that's it. Let me stop the slides and let me stop the recording.